In this video, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, whereas it's not going to be me showing you how to do something specific in React and then telling you why it's better to do it this way as opposed to any other way, but rather I'm going to show you something that I'm currently working on and a solution I found to a problem that I had in that project that may or may not be correct in the long term. So get ready because this is going to be an interesting video and you're actually going to learn a lot. And also I want to take this opportunity to say that if you want to learn how to build a big and complex application with React as a total beginner with no experience, check out Project React in the description. You will not regret it. Let's get into it. Alright, so I have my VS Code over here, and let's first start by showing you the actual problem. So I'm going to open up here Routines API. So the application that I'm building is a routine/habit builder app, and you can essentially have different routines. You can add items to your routines, right? So you have like morning routine, wake up, make bed, brush your teeth, and so on. And you're essentially supposed to do those, and it counts like a streak over time. And it's to help better your routines and build better habits to make yourself a better person. That's generally the gist of this entire application. And over here, this file is the actual API file that is actually communicating between the front end, my actual application, and the back end and the database. All of this is done using Drizzle ORM. So Drizzle is like an ORM to basically access the database. And I'm using a simple SQLite database to do all of that. And this is all of the functions related to the actual routines. So that is the main entity in this application. Everything that you do is actually related to a routine. And as you can see here, I have all of these get things in progress because I'm literally building this application right now, and you get to see exactly how I'm building it in real time in a broken state, if you will, with some solutions that again may or may not be correct. And I just want to talk about them because I find them really interesting and there's something to learn from them. So I want to go here to get routines for date. So let's scroll down over here. There's a couple of functions and there we go. We have get routines for date. So this is a function that receives a date. It is just a standard date object. And for that, it is going to get all of the routines that are due on that specific date. The way that routines work is they have different frequencies. So a routine can be daily, it can be weekly, it can be monthly, and it can also be on different days, right? So it can be weekly on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It can be monthly on every 20th of the month and so on. So that means that for any given date, there might be a routine that is due on that date or there might not. And this function is essentially responsible for getting all of the routines that are due on a specific date. That's what it does. So over here, as you can see, I'm first getting the actual user from the database. I'm using db.query.userModel and then finding the first user. In this case, this is a local application, so it's offline first. There's only ever going to be one user, so it's safe to just find the first user. And then I'm getting the first user and I'm getting all of the routines. And inside of the routines, I'm also getting all of the frequencies. So the frequencies over here, they hold the essentially frequency of the routine. Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? And what specific days they are. The versions over here, don't pay too much attention to it. It's essentially how I keep track of the changes that you do to your routine. So if you ever make a change to routine, I create a new version, and that way I can see all of the changes, and you also don't lose how your routine was in the past because I use that for analytics and data. Then I come here, I make a check that if there's no user, I'm actually throwing an error. This is just a prevention. There always should be a user, but you never know. It's always better to throw an error and then catch it and handle it in the application. And then I have here something that is very dirty, and that's why there's a to-do over here. I'm basically manually sorting the routines by time. I know that I should do this in the database. I just didn't want to spend the time to do it now because it isn't that trivial the way that I'm ordering different things, because I'm ordering by relations, and that's just a whole different story. So I just did it this way and I put it to do, and for now I'm fine with this, and there we go. I'm just ordering the routines. And then there's this piece of code over here, this one line of code that does all of the magic. We're basically passing the ordered routines, the routines that we just ordered over here, we're passing them and the date to this build routines for date function. In this function over here, this is the problem. So if I open up this function over here, this one receives an array of routines, which is a routine and the versions. So that's why we had to get the versions over here. We need the versions because we need to pass those to this function over here, because it's going to use the versions to actually figure out which routines are due on that specific date. That's how this whole thing works. This is a bunch of code that I'm not going to go into because it is a little bit complicated as to how it figures all of this out. The most important thing is this result over here, and specifically the type of that result. So as you can see here, we're declaring a result, and this has a very complicated type that is a routine, and then every routine also has frequencies, which is also this routine frequency. These are the relations of the routine. It's an array. Then we also have items, which is routine item, and also the entries of that specific item, all of that as an array over here, and then also the versions. I am returning all of this, as you can see here. I'm just doing some loops, and I'm essentially at the end, I'm doing a result.push, and I'm pushing this object over here, which has the routine, frequencies, items, and versions over here. And then I'm returning this entire thing to this function as routines, and this is returning as the return value of this specific function. So this type over here is what I want you to focus at, and how this is getting returned all the way to this function, which is basically going to be the return type of this specific function. So what's the problem, you might ask? Well, the problem has to do with this type over here. This is a type that is specific to this specific function over here, and thus is specific to the actual function get routines for date that is actually returning this type. I have to use this type, and I have to use the values inside of this type in my actual React components to do stuff to it, to display the values, to display the frequency, to display items, to make sure that to check if there's an item on that specific date, and so on. I have to use all of this property over here in my React components to actually use stuff and display data to the actual user. The problem with that is I have to build components that work with this data, but still have to be reusable to be reused across different places in the actual application. As you can see here, this is a very specific type. This is a routine that comes with its frequencies, with its items, and every single item also comes with its entries, and also the routine comes with its versions as well. I have to have this type be specific enough and put this in my actual React components to be able to use, for example, routine.frequencies or routine.versions. If I don't have the type correctly over here, then I'm not going to be able to use the actual values of that specific type. So for example, right, if I come back here to the API and I right click on this and I go to find all references, it's going to find me where this function is getting used, and it's actually getting used over here inside of this query function. So this is using React query. So I have a hook over here, use routines for date query, and I'm actually using this function over here, get routines for date, and I'm passing the date. If I right click here and go to references of this hook over here, I'm using it inside of one page over here. This is the actual schedule screen. This is the main home screen where you actually get to see the schedule and all of the dates and all the routines that are done on that specific date. So over here, by the way, this is using React Native, but that's totally irrelevant for this video because everything is the same. I'm using that hook, use routines for date query. I'm passing the selected date, which is a piece of state held inside of this component. And then these routines over here, which remember have this complex type over here, I'm passing those directly to this component over here, routine entry list. I'm passing the actual date and the routines to it. And now this component, here's the thing, this component needs to have the correct type of that specific routine because it is going to use every single thing in that routine. But the problem with that is that this component over here, if I open here and just ignore the type for a second, this one takes the routines and then maps over the routines using a flat list. This is a component that just maps over things in an efficient way. It takes the data over here, routines, it actually gets them. And then for every single element, it runs this function, render item. And this item over here is the actual routine, each individual item in this array. So we're passing this routine to this component over here, routine entry card, which means that this component also needs to have that specific type that has all of those specific properties, right? But then if I open up this component, you see I put the type over here. Again, ignore the type, we're going to get to this in just a moment. This one takes the routine, and then over here, we're passing it to another component, the routine entry card menu and the routine entry card progress section. These are different components, and this is normal. In a React application, you want to have separate components for different things to encapsulate logic. And if they need to take props, well, you have to define those props and define the types. So we have this component over here, which is defined in the same file. This also needs the same type of that routine. I hope you're getting what I'm getting at. The problem with this entire thing is if I go back here to this function over here and this helper, where is it? This build routines for date, I have to take this type, this specific type, and then I have to go to every single component over here and pass it as the type of that specific routine, which means I have to come here to read routine entry list and pass it. I have to then come here to routine entry card, also pass the same type, come back here to any subcomponents and also pass the same type. And the problem with this is now, if I ever come here and I change something in this type, I maybe add frequencies or I remove frequencies or I add something to items, I have to go back and remember to do that to every single one of these types, which I don't want to do. And that's where the problem came, because I didn't want to do this way because this is a highly custom type that there's no other way to get around it. I would have to take this type, copy it, and paste it every single other place. And then the other problem is I didn't find any efficient way to take this entire type and put it in some sort of reusable type that can be customized, right? Because the thing is, in some screens, in some components, I will not need the frequencies. In other screens, I will not need the items. In other screens, I may not need the versions. Or in some screens, I only need 2 of these things and I maybe need a third one that is not part of this. How do I structure the type to be reusable enough, to be able to be used in every single component, and for the component to also have the correct type without me having to repeat things over and over again and make the chance of making mistakes when I forget to add something in all the different places that I've added it. So the solution that I came up to this problem, because again, I didn't have a better solution, and again, this isn't necessarily the right solution or the wrong solution, is to take this actual return value, the return type of this function, which gets inferred from this function over here. Where is it? This one gets returned over here. To take the return type of the get routines for date function, which you can see here returns a promise with all of this complex type, and then use that directly in my components. So over here, routine entry list, rather, I take the routines and I do await it because I am returning a promise. I'm awaiting the return of that promise, and then return type of, and then that function directly. And then I do this, and then when I pass this to the routine entry card, I do the same thing. I come here, I do awaited, return type, and then give that same function, and then index it by the number, which gets me each individual routine. And then I take this, and then whenever I have another component, I also do the same thing. It is the same type, awaited, return type of, and then index it with the number to get that specific routine. The benefit of doing things this way is that now, if I come here and I add something to this type, that type is automatically going to get reflected in every single component that uses it, because it is being piped through all the functions, through all of the props, using this prop over here, await, return type, and then the type of the actual function. The benefit of this is that now I don't have to change these types ever again. They're connected to the function. So if the function changes, if I do anything in here, I'm automatically going to have access to all of those new updates and all those values directly inside of every single component. The downside of this, and that's what I'm not sure about, is that now all of these components are tied to this function or to another function that returns a routine in the same customized way as this component, which means that now this component is not as reusable as I wanted it to be, because it expects a certain type of data that only comes from a specific function in my code. So if I want to reuse this in another place, I have to either use this function or create a new function that returns the same type or enough types that overlaps with it to satisfy the type constraints of this specific component. Now, the thing is, I'm not 100% sure about this pattern. So the current state of the application is there's enough components there where I was able to kind of test this pattern and I haven't run into any problems yet, but the application is not finished and I cannot guarantee that I will never run into this problem and that I will never have to use this component somewhere else and it needs to have a different type. And if I do, I'm not sure what I would do. I'm not sure what I would change to this type to make that happen in a way that's still efficient, still allows me to not repeat myself over and over again, and is still extensible in case I want to add more things to it in the future in an easy way. The closest I actually came to this is if I go back here to the routines API, I have another function over here, which is the get routine for date. This is a singular routine. It takes an ID, which is a routine of type ID, and it does the same thing. But over here, we're calling the same function, build routines for date, and we're passing the routine, and then we're just getting the first routine in that array, right? So we're using the same function, which means that we're using the same type, which means that I can use the same components in both screens. And that works for me so far. But again, I cannot guarantee that this is going to work forever in the future, and I cannot guarantee that this is a good solution to this problem. And I wanted to make this video to first of all show you that this is totally okay in an application. You might have a solution that works for now and there's no obvious better solution in sight, so you apply it. And if in the future you have a situation where this solution no longer works, that's totally fine to change it, to adapt, and to come up with a better solution that fits that specific use case at that specific time. And also, I wanted to share a little bit into the insights of what it's like to actually build an application. You're going to run into these things so often, and you have to develop the skill of finding the right solution at the right time and being okay with it not being the perfect solution and being okay with you changing this later on in the future just because you find a better solution that makes more sense. And I mean, if you look at it, that's exactly what I did over here. If we go back to get routines for date, the one that gets all of the routines, I have this piece of code over here. This is not a good solution by any means. This is hugely inefficient, right? And that's why I put a to-do here to actually implement proper sorting at the database level by time, because that is going to be more efficient. However, for this particular case, at this particular time in this project, this solution is sufficient and it allows me to progress in other areas that are more important right now for the project, and I can revisit this later in the future, because this, although it's not the best solution, it does work and it does accomplish exactly what I want. And also you have to think about the fact that at most you're not going to have more than 10 routines, so this is never really going to be that unperformant. So again, this is totally okay, and I'm expecting to change this in the future just because there is going to be a better solution that I'm going to want to add for that specific project. So there you go. I hope that this was helpful in showing you a little bit how I think about building my own React applications, and I hope that you got some value out of this video. And if you did, please leave this video a big thumbs up. You can also click here to subscribe, or you can click here to watch a different video of mine that YouTube seems to think that you're really going to enjoy. And with that being said, my name has been Darius Kozden. This is Kozden Solutions. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.